Side by side, marking a new era of cooperation, China hosts leaders of Central Asia for a two-day summit. The highlights from the ancient city of Xi'an. A rising death toll from destructive floods in northern Italy, communities underwater or cut off by mud and debris, rescues, evacuations, and the search for those missing. And living in fear, troubling new findings on how racist attacks, threats, and harassment are taking a toll on Asian Americans.
Live from Washington, this is The World Today.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Asiye Namdar in Washington. We begin with a new era of relations between China and Central Asia. Agreements and pledges of economic cooperation during a summit hosted by President Xi Jinping in the ancient city of Xi'an. It's the first in-person meeting between the 5 Central Asian countries and China since the establishment of diplomatic ties 31 years ago. On Thursday, Chinese President Xi Jinping held a welcome banquet inviting leaders to board the express train of China's development and map a new blueprint for ties. CGTN's Meng Qingsheng reports.
President Xi Jinping has a tight and fruitful agenda on the first day of the two-day summit. He held 4 rounds of bilateral talks with the leaders of Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. After each meeting, the heads of state signed important cooperative deals to strengthen their neighborly and friendly relations. President Xi stressed the China-Central Asian relationship has traveled a 31-year journey. It enjoys deep historical roots, solid political foundations, substantive cooperation, and extensive public support. And China is ready to work with Central Asia to build a community with a shared future, featuring everlasting friendship, solidarity, and mutual benefit. Leaders of Central Asia reiterated their support for the One China principle, and they praised the China-proposed Global Development Initiative, Global Security Initiative, and Global Civilization Initiative. They expressed their willingness to enhance the depth, breadth, and scale of cooperation and expand their partnership in areas like the economy, trade, natural gas, connectivity, and cultural exchange. Central Asia also voiced their support for the Belt and Road Initiative launched back in 2013. As of the end of 2022, statistics show over 65,000 China-Europe freight trains had transported $300 billion worth of cargo, and nearly 80% of the total trips passed through Central Asia. I've spoken to business people from Central Asia who told me the freight trains offer a secure and reliable channel for trade and economic cooperation. The train service only costs 1/5 of air transportation and takes a quarter of the time required by shipping. Currently, China's civil aviation sector are working together with the Central Asian countries to develop an air Silk Road. This will bring more opportunities for cooperation in culture, business, and tourism. China has also been the largest or main trading partner of Central Asian countries for many years, and its trade volume has continuously hit record highs. In the process of combating extremist terrorist activities, China has carried out close cooperation with law enforcement agencies and judiciary institutions in Central Asia. China has become one of the main destinations and preferred countries for students in Central Asia to study abroad. The number of Central Asian students studying in China has rapidly increased after the COVID-19 pandemic. In-depth cooperation is clearly a valuable asset all sides cherish. President Xi Jinping emphasized that China will always be a trustworthy and reliable neighbor, partner, friend, and brother to Central Asian countries. Meng Qingsheng, CGTN, Xi'an, Shanxi Province.
The former Foreign Minister of Uzbekistan, Vladimir Norov, shared his take on the Belt and Road Initiative, sitting down with CGTN's Zhao Yunfei before the Central Asia Summit in Xi'an officially opened.
The proposal by Chinese leaders to organize this summit in Xi'an have some special meanings, because from Xi'an it has begun the Silk Road. From Xi'an, 2,200 years before, established first full-fledged cooperation between China and Central Asian nations. That's why certainly when we're talking about our modern and future, we're always looking to the history of our cooperation. The history teaching us that such cooperation became successful when based on mutual interest, mutual benefit. All Central Asian countries understand the huge potential of China in economy, in technology, in innovation.
Russia has unleashed another round of missiles on Ukraine. Kyiv says it intercepted 29 out of the 30 rockets overnight. One hit an industrial building in the southern region of Odessa, killing one person. Two were injured. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced an advisory council to restore Ukrainian rule over Russia-annexed Crimea. China's former ambassador to Russia, Li Wei, is on a two-day diplomatic visit to Ukraine. He met with President Zelensky and other top officials and reiterated China's commitment to brokering some kind of political settlement to end the conflict. Li is the most senior Chinese official to visit since the war began. His visit to Ukraine will be followed by visits to Poland, France, and Germany. More than 1,000 Russians have applied for political asylum in neighboring Finland after fleeing a mandatory military draft, but their fate is up in the air. Authorities in Helsinki are seeking legal guidance from the European Union on whether to grant them asylum. Stuart Smith with more on that from Moscow.
Although Finland closed its land border to Russian tourists last year, there have always been ways to get to Finland, such as arriving in a different European country first and then travelling over land. But since January, that option is no longer possible, as Finland temporarily stopped considering asylum for Russians fleeing mobilisation, while authorities investigated what the consequences truly are for men choosing not to fight. There's been no indication, though, from the EU as to when it will finalise its guidance. Meanwhile, after the renewal of the Black Sea grain deal on Wednesday, the Kremlin remains unhappy with the agreement, but has expressed hope for progress. The agreement brokered by the UN and Turkey allows the shipments of grain from Ukraine's Black Sea ports, and it's seen as critical to global food security. On Thursday, a spokesman said options for sending payments to Russia's state-owned agricultural bank were being looked into, which would circumvent its exclusion from the SWIFT payment system, one of Russia's key demands to have the grain deal renewed again in 60 days. Stuart Smith, CGTN, Moscow.
The UN Security Council is holding a high-stakes meeting on Ukraine right now. The agenda, threats to international peace and security, and you're looking live pictures from the Security Council meeting. Russia called for this to discuss Western weapons provided to Ukraine. It is the fourth such meeting on the issue and comes on the heels of a flurry of announcements on additional military aid for Kyiv from its European allies. G7 leaders are also expected to pledge their continuing support for Ukraine during their summit in Japan. It will be held in Hiroshima, the site of the first atomic bomb attack during World War II. Discussions will focus on a wide range of issues, from the conflict in Ukraine and security issues to economic policy and climate change. Ukraine's President Zelensky will join the session via internet. Still ahead, heightened tensions during Israel's controversial Flag Day march, plus getting goods to areas in Brazil where few will go. Details on a new initiative targeting local communities.
.360-degree profiles of industry movers and shakers, tech mavericks, and policymakers. We drill down on their success. We ask how they set strategy and how they navigate in an increasingly competitive market. Real talk, real business. Join the conversation. Biz Talk, only on CGTN. Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London. China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
We are CGTN, China Global Television Network.
A climbing death toll from the catastrophic floods in northern Italy. More than a dozen people have died. Several are still missing. Thousands have been forced from their homes, and some areas are completely cut off. 6 months of rainfall fell in less than 2 days. Search and rescue operations are far from over. Giles Gibson reports from Rome.
Fields submerged, streets transformed into rivers, houses surrounded by water. Italy's interior minister needed a helicopter to take in the extent of the damage in Emilia-Romagna. On the ground, or where there should be dry ground, rescue workers are using boats to search towns and villages. And for those able to get back into their homes, there's not much to salvage.
You see, we need to do everything. We need to do everything from the beginning. The books, all the documents, all the clothes, they are all gone. They say you have to get out. You have to leave the house. You see it here.
As the relief operation shifts into gear, collapsed bridges and hundreds of landslides are disrupting transport networks.
The situation is very complicated. The only road available to reach Faenza and Ravenna is the Via Emilia. The highway is closed due to flooding.
This region has actually been suffering from drought in recent months. Experts say very dry ground can't absorb water as fast as it normally can. And with more rain forecast in the days to come, this entire region will remain on edge.
Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has thanked rescue teams for their, quote, amazing work. But as she's currently in Japan for the G7 summit, she's having to manage this crisis from a distance. Giles Gibson for CGTN in Rome.
Violent confrontations in Jerusalem's Old City after thousands of Israeli nationalists marched into the Muslim quarter. It happened during an annual parade when Israel marks its capture of Jerusalem in the 1967 war. Things got ugly when some Israeli nationalists threw stones, sticks, and bottles at Palestinians and foreign journalists. They also cheered and chanted racist slogans. The event has become a show of force for Jewish nationalists. While Palestinians see the day as a blatant provocation in an area they and most of the world considers occupied territory. They organized their own flag marches in the West Bank and Gaza, some only a few hundred meters away from the Israel-Gaza separation fence. A new survey shows half the population of Asian Americans in the U.S. don't feel safe because of a recent rise in racist attacks, threats, harassment, and violence. The troubling findings come on the heels of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Jody Jacobs headed to New York's Chinatown to see how people there are coping.
Very sad and disappointed after so much taxes I've paid. I'm turning 80 and still paying taxes. All I did all these years is working hard. I'm extremely disappointed.
Tough topic to talk about for Wan Yanwu. After more than 60 years in New York City, he says he's never felt this unsafe as a Chinese man. Yan Hu, who runs this restaurant in the city's Chinatown and has been doing so for half a century. But since the pandemic, he says his family has been targeted by anti-Asian hate speech in the streets.
Yes, I feel like we are being discriminated. We as Asian Americans, we don't feel we're fairly treated here. My staff didn't even feel safe to commute to work. After we reopened, I had to send a car to pick them up. During the peak of the pandemic, we closed up for 5 months and moved to New Jersey because we didn't feel safe staying here. I was terrified.
While many other people along this street in New York's Chinatown wouldn't speak to us on camera, they tell us that staying indoors, especially at night, has become a new reality for them. In a recent study by the Asian American Foundation conducted between February and March this year, 1 in 2 Asian Americans say they felt unsafe in the US. Nearly 80% said they don't feel like they are really accepted and don't feel like they completely belong.
Security was never our issue in our earlier surveys. Now is everything else is secondary.
Wellington Chen is the executive director of the Chinatown Business Improvement District. He says from his own experience, people living in Chinatown are a lot more anxious as hate crime incidents have increased.
It's random, unpredictable. I have always said I almost got stabbed down half a block away. We were just installing a camera on one of the biggest subway stations, and the corner lady that's selling noodle there for over a quarter century, she said her friend just got shoved down the door on the subway station for no reason.
The Chinatown Business Improvement District has started installing cameras all over the neighborhood, like this one along Canal Street, in an attempt to record and respond quicker to incidents. Chen says it's too early to tell if their interventions are working. The national survey also revealed some other worrying figures, like 47% of Asian American respondents saying they feel viewed more as foreigners rather than Americans, and 73% saying they feel they are still being blamed for COVID-19 and believe that it's continuing to fuel anti-Asian violence. Jody Jacobs, CGTN, New York.
Montana has become the first U.S. state to ban Chinese-owned social media giant TikTok, citing security concerns. The governor signed a measure that will enact a complete ban starting January of next year. That means Google and Apple's app stores cannot offer TikTok in the state, but Montana says it will not impose any penalties on individuals using the app. The move is expected to face legal challenges. The hugely popular TikTok has 150 million users in the United States. Shopping online and having it delivered in Brazil's favelas is difficult. Lack of security and registered addresses make them pretty much off limits for most e-commerce. The local entrepreneurs are trying to change that. Lucrecia Franco reports from Rio de Janeiro.
Vila Ideal, a favela in Rio de Janeiro, is just one of the over 11,000 informal neighborhoods spread throughout Brazil. A maze of cinder block homes where drugs and violence are common. Delivery services here are off limits. Not for the Delivery das Favelas, a startup that connects retailers and customers through a website and takes care of all the logistics.
Já morei em 2 comunidades, era grande complexo.
I already lived in 2 favelas, and I know what it feels like to buy a product online, paying the delivery fee, and not receiving it because of where I lived.
Endereço fora da comunidade.
So far, the company is operating in Vila Ideal and in 2 other communities, setting up distribution centers where purchases are brought and sorted for further delivery. But it's not easy to find addresses here. Many homes are located in streets or alleys like this one, without names or numbers, so the company only hires favela residents who know the area well to make the deliveries. Whether on motorbikes or by foot if needed, the parcels are delivered to the buyers' homes, no matter in which part of the community they live. Retailers finance the whole operation with no cost for the clients.
I have been living here for 40 years, and this is the first time I'm receiving a product at my doorstep. I am very happy.
And the company is expected to grow. The number of Brazilians living in favelas has jumped 40% since the 2010 census, from more than 11.4 million to nearly 16 million people in 2022.
A gente vê que com essa crescente,
we are seeing this increase of people forced to live in favelas and needing to be treated equally and with dignity.
Favela residents say the initiative is allowing them to access affordable online shopping, something they need and deserve, just like everyone else. Lucrecia Franco, CGTN, Rio de Janeiro.
Coming up, seeing a different side of Syria, we travel to northern China, where relics of the country's rich culture are on display.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
May 18th marks International Museum Day, an opportunity to raise awareness about the world's cultural treasures. An exhibit in China is doing just that by showcasing ancient relics from Syria. Hu Chao has the story.
A feast for those who love the cultures and history of places far and wide. Nearly 200 Syrian artifacts are on display in Shanxi Museum, the capital city of Taiyuan, combining items from 9 Syrian and 3 domestic institutions. Syria has one of the world's oldest civilizations, and relics on display span a period of hundreds of thousands of years. Little surprise then, the exhibition is attracting visitors from all across China.
I've come all the way from Xuzhou. As Syria has undergone the hell of war, it's really amazing to have the chance to see the country's cultural relics in China.
I come from Hohhot. I am impressed by how ancient Syrian culture was as splendid as Chinese culture, and many cultural exchanges between China and Syria through history. And I hope the two sides have more in future.
Syria sits in Western Asia, and despite being in a region whose recent history is one of turmoil, it has a long and rich heritage. Sitting at the crossroads of Asia, Africa, and Europe, ancient Syria was a place where multiple races, groups, and cultures met and integrated with each other. As time went by, a uniquely charming Syrian culture was formed. Syria was an important hub along the ancient Silk Road, connecting with China through trade and cultural exchange.
The 3 sets of silk and fabric were excavated from the Palmyra site in Syria. The patterns on them show the distinctive features of Chinese culture. This reflects the interaction between ancient China and Syria more than 2,000 years ago. This ceremonial bronze axe was unearthed in Syria's ancient city of Ugarit. and China's unearthed bronze items made through similar craftsmanship from the Orange Stage period. That means Western Asian civilization was continuously brought to Asian China via the Eurasian steppe.
The exhibition will last till early July and promises to show another side to Syria beyond the war. Hu Chao, CGTN, Shanxi Province.
Now, a number of museums, including the National Museum of Chinese Writing, have turned to digital technology to make things more interactive. Zhou Yixin with that.
Talking about the ancient city of Anyang, the Yin ruins is a must visit. It is the first capital site in Chinese history to pass down documentary records. We know the Yin ruins have a history of 3,300 years because of the ancient script, which are called the oracle bronze inscriptions that survived the era and were excavated from the Yin ruins. That's why the National Museum of Chinese Writing is located in Anyang. Last month, the museum opened a new interactive exhibition, attracting a lot of young visitors. Listen, that's the sound of a deer. These ancient writings record the names of different animals. We can tell that back then, the writings of these Chinese characters are very similar to the shape of the animals. These are very typical hieroglyphics. The exhibition explains the principle of ancient character creation, from simple astronomical weather, animals and plants, hunting and farming, and basic necessities of life. Most of the characters shown in the exhibition follow the basic method of imitating the shape of objects, which makes it easier for young people to understand how the ancient writings are created.
我们进行了多媒体的跟文字相结合的一些软件开发。
We have developed software that combines multimedia and ancient writing. These multimedia installations are the main exhibits here. We want to create a public space that is interactive, full of experience, and allows visitors to explore by themselves.
In the exhibition hall about the clothing, food, housing, and transportation of the ancients, students experienced imitating the dress of the ancients and learned some ancient characters related to eating as they viewed imitations of the ancients' utensils. The students also played an interactive device that simulated divination and learned about the main uses of oracle bone inscriptions in ancient times. I think the games and interactive installations in this exhibition are very interesting. Help us learn more about Chinese writing and deepen my love for Chinese characters. With the interactive installations, students learn the knowledge of Chinese writing while having fun. In the future, interactive exhibitions may become a trend in museums across China, making knowledge more accessible. Zhou Yixin, CGTN, Anyang, Henan Province.
And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. I'm Asiye Namdar in Washington.